Madam Chair, if I might, I checked with Delegate Wood's office, and they said that he had to go home for a funeral, but I just checked, and they said he was back in town. I looked in the committee and didn't see him, so he...
Well, if he shows up, we'll let him come up.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good afternoon. Dennis McCoy, appearing before you today representing the Maryland Ready Mix Concrete Association in support of House Bill 1325. A very wise person who used to be chairman of this committee said one time, the mind cannot absorb more than the seat can endure, so I'm going to be rather brief. I have a four-person... That was a Delegate Athey. May he rest in peace. I'm going to be very brief. I have a four-person panel here, but I would like to set the table for you. This process called life cycle cost analysis is relatively new and is a process which I might say is encouraged, pushed in a big way by the U.S. Department of Transportation. But it's a process where you look at just not the cost of doing something in today's dollars, but rather the cost of that process over a life cycle. This is a matter involving, as it is in this bill with the amendments that I've submitted, involving transportation and more specifically paving of roadways and what you use to pave them. If you could pave them with sand, it would be relatively cheap at the front end, but it would only last a week. So what would you gain by that? What this process, life cycle cost analysis, does is consider not just that front end cost, but how long, whatever it is you're doing, lasts, and what it costs to maintain it over that life cycle. It's a fairly simple process. Now, I will tell you that the process is somewhat open to manipulation by either changing the characteristics or changing the weight that you assign to each characteristic on a job-by-job basis. Thus, House Bill 1325. What this bill says, basically, is that the department shall adopt regulations that will set out what the characteristics are, what the weight of those characteristics are, submit that to the decision makers, submit it to the to the Board of Public Works when the decision is made. They can ignore it if they want, but they will be the facts as to the cost of the project. It's a very simple bill. If I might, Madam Chair, I have with me Martha Fernandez, who is actually with one of the companies engaged in the concrete business, and I'd like to have her talk to you about that part of it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Martha Marmo Fernandez, and I own a ready-mix concrete company in Baltimore, Maryland. I employ 18 Maryland residents, and all we're asking for is an equal opportunity to bid on a fair playing field when Maryland makes decisions about pavement. We believe that Maryland Department of Transportation is not taking advantage of ready-mix concrete for paving projects. I feel that concrete pavement is a wonderful option that offers increased value and sustainability for fewer tax dollars. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology has confirmed through their life cycle cost analysis that concrete is competitive with asphalt on the initial cost and offers a 25% cost savings over the lifespan of the road. We also have data that shows asphalt paving prices goes down when concrete is present as competition. Did you know that 98% of Maryland roads are paved with asphalt? These roads often require substantial replacement every 10 to 15 years. The state uses 1 to 2 inch asphalt overlay and expects the surface to last for about 7 through 15 years. The reality is the road may only deteriorate and start to deteriorate after 3 to 5 years. This translates into the Department of Transportation having to resurface the asphalt roads 3 or 4 times during the lifespan of that road. While asphalt is a petroleum-based product, the price is extremely volatile. The cost of concrete has remained relatively flat over the past 10 years and is not subject to wide fluctuations. On projects that call for asphalt, there are clauses that provide for price changes as the price of asphalt changes. Data is not available in Maryland for the at-bid cost versus the at-built cost for asphalt. MDOT should be tracing these cost differences. Ready-mix concrete pavement has many benefits. We know that concrete is competitive from a pricing standpoint. Concrete is also sustainable and durable. 81% of the goods shipped in Maryland travel by truck. Concrete pavement is more fuel efficient, and MIT found that heavy trucks can save as much as 7% on fuel costs when traveling on concrete pavement. From an environmental standpoint, concrete pavement leaves a smaller carbon footprint. Many of the materials used to make concrete are recyclable. Concrete reduces the urban heat-land effect, and many of the materials used to make concrete are also locally available, and that would help from increasing the employment within our state. The bottom line is that concrete pavement lasts significantly longer than asphalt, and that is why MDOT should take advantage of concrete when selecting materials and use tools such as the lifestyle cost analysis to maximize taxpayers' dollars. As Maryland struggles to fund new roads and maintain existing roads, I urge you to consider HB 1325 as a tool that will assist the Department of Transportation to make good economic decisions and also to allow for more fair competition. Thank you.
May I introduce the sponsor of the bill, John Wood, who's here. Would you like to make a comment? Or?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I don't know how far you've gotten.
But she's the first witness.
And you probably have heard all you need to hear. Very simple bill. All we're asking is that bills when they're looking at, the department's looking at doing analysis and all, that they look at concrete as well as asphalt and anything else that they do.
Fine. Thank you very much.
I'll leave it up to the experts and let them handle this. And
Great.
Thank you for a favorable bill.
Good. Steve Tripp?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Stephen Tripp with Cheney Enterprises, a local family-owned construction materials company. When I first joined the paving industry, I attended an SHA presentation noting that Maryland's funds from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act were going mostly to resurfacing, and none of that work would be open to competitive pavement options. With a young family, I realized that while my children would spend the rest of their lives paying down the debt incurred for these resurfaced roads, the roads would be resurfaced again before they are old enough to drive on them. They will never drive on pavements they will have to pay for. I've asked James, my oldest son, how he feels about that. You can imagine what his answer was. SHA leadership told us that the materials for resurfacing projects were not competitively bid because of MOT, maintenance of traffic, which is the much needed effort to keep traffic moving during construction. We were told that concrete takes too long. Working with SHA, we developed a demonstration that took a 70,000-pound mixer truck driving only over 6-hour-old, 3-inch thick concrete, yet still no competitive road resurfacing projects came. Later, we met again with SHA and even DOT leadership about MOT and life cycle costing, but still no competitive road resurfacing projects came. The SHA will try and warn you of the many complaining calls you will get from the traveling public if lane closures are any different than they already are. But I assure you of this, Maryland did not invent traffic and congestion, neither do we have exclusive rights to it. Other states with competitive two-pavement systems have solved these problems and are ready to share what, to Maryland, is innovation, but to them is common practice. But at over 98% of SHA maintained roads being surfaced in asphalt, Maryland has created a paving monopoly as one of the least competitive states in the nation. It's my experience that the traveling public will be okay with a few extra minutes of traffic on a weekend if they understand that it will save them time and money over the life cycle. Think of the cost of MOT on the same spot over and over again. Just wasted money. As an illustration, while the miles of roads maintained by SHA has only increased less than 2% since 1997, the cost to maintain those roads has more than doubled. Yet we still have a system that is in desperate need of help. If you're looking for money, that waste is where you can find it. This spending is perpetual and unsustainable. I remember working on a Saturday on a turn lane where asphalt was consistently shifting under the heavy traffic conditions. On 2 separate occasions, motorists rolled down their window to ask what we were doing with the concrete. We explained that we were putting concrete in so we would not have to come back and fix this again for decades. Despite the minor inconvenience we were to both of them, they both told us that we needed to do that more, and we couldn't agree more. That's the conclusion that an educated public and an educated legislature will come to. I strongly encourage you to do the right thing in supporting HB 1325. Lower paving costs, increase environmental stewardship, introduce fair competition into Maryland, and give my children a road they can actually use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's Henry Dredskin?
It's actually, I apologize for my scribble. It's Henry Prenger, P-R-E-N-G-E-R.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Everybody gets it wrong, that's fine. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Henry Prenger. I'm engineer with Lafarge Cement. I'm a graduate of Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, of Morgan State University, of Johns Hopkins University. I'm a Maryland boy, Baltimore boy. I'm also a graduate of Maryland State Highway Administration. And I think I learned more in my years at Maryland State Highway than I did in all of those fine institutions about how to be an engineer. It's a great place to work. They have smart people there. And we're not here to cast any aspersions that way. I got a call, and it was, can you talk about life cycle cost analysis? What do you know about it? And I said, well, I used to do it 20 years ago or more when I worked for the state. And what do you want to know? Because I can't remember a whole lot about 20 years ago. So the question was, well, the state's come forward and they've said that the cost of doing life cycle cost analysis is a lot. And they threw some figures at me, and I'm thinking, I did it when I was a young engineer for $30,000 a year, and it was only part of my work, and I think I got ripped off. So I'm willing to go back now as a consultant. Seriously, it wasn't that hard back then, but I do realize things change, and I have kept touch with that part of the industry, and life cycle cost analysis has changed in that 20 years. So I went to the experts, the guys that are doing it right now at MIT, and said, you've got the most recent research. You're, besides, Hopkins guys and Morgan guys, you're the smartest guys in the country. What do you have to say? What is the ruling from MIT? Here's what the state says it's going to cost us. And they said, well, we think that the figures are way out of line. And they showed us what consultants were charging to do life cycle cost analysis. So having worked for the state, I understand that sometimes you get into these systems and they become very convoluted. And I think that there are simpler ways to do it and there are better ways to do it. And I talked to the people at MIT, and they're willing to help us with that. And it's just not MIT. Federal Highway Administration has a great program also to do this. So I would disagree respectfully with the figures that are coming back from the state. I think we need to look at that harder. And I think on the other side of it, having performed it before, when you do this, you can see where the real savings come back to you. And the other thing that you get, there's some guys back here from the asphalt industry that are good guys and they have a good product. When we do competition with the asphalt guys head to head, they bring their A game. They can put a really good product down. When we're competing head to head, we bring our A game. We can put a really good product down. So it brings that good competition and you get a good road. I wasn't going to continue after that, but Delegate Miller had a question earlier, and it was about, was Maryland a friendly state to do work in? And my company has some very recent personal experience with that. We've done business in Maryland for 50 years. We were one of the 3 main suppliers of Portland cement in Maryland for 50 years. We brought 400 to 500,000 tons of cement into Maryland in the good years, and we pulled out of Maryland in December. So Our company, Lafarge Cement, pulled out. We still have holdings with concrete. We have holdings at Sparrows Point with slag cement. I was in the conversations when the economic conditions started to go down, and it was tough for anybody in the construction industry. And you don't have an MBA have to have an MBA to take a look at it and say, if you don't have any residential and you don't have very much commercial, and all of the paving work is going asphalt, and we're going to the people in France saying we think we should stay in Maryland, and they're saying why? You don't have any segments of your market anymore. We don't want corporate welfare. We don't want somebody saying a certain percentage of all the work needs to be concrete. We want a fair chance to compete. And I feel this very personally because I had to watch a lot of my friends get laid off. And it's been a tough environment to be in. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to pass it on to Tom Evans.
Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Tom Evans, and I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Ready Mix Concrete Association. These guys are all active members of that organization. And as Henry did say, we have an excellent working relationship with Maryland State Highway Administration. We work with a number of their folks in the materials office and pavement design. And we hear from even a lot of the folks inside there that they think we could have longer-lasting roads, and we should have longer-lasting roads in some cases. So I think many of the folks within the department and even outside the department, as Steve said, feel there's something wrong with the system. Why do we have 98% of our roads covered in asphalt right now? And is it because of maintenance of traffic has such a high weight that we're afraid to shut the road down long enough to fix it properly? I'm not sure, but if you look at other states, and I'm only going to quote two states here, West Virginia, very close by, and Colorado. The last 4 highway paving projects in West Virginia were given fair opportunity. They call it alternate design, alternate bid. And those jobs saved the state $10 million. I'm not even going to tell you what the outcome of the pavement choice was, but because it was equal opportunity to bid, the state saved the money. Looking at Colorado, they've been incorporating a life cycle cost since '94. They've certainly changed it a few times to set different triggers, whether it be the value of the road project or the number of vehicles that are beyond that road. But they have still incorporated this, and they'll tell you things like it provides greater communication between the agency and the industries. It improves efficiency in the roadway performance. It keeps engineers current with regard to the progressive developments within materials and technology. It provides cost justification to key stakeholders. It helps extend the use of funds, as we've all been talking about here today. Creates a two-way feedback, creates transparency, and really protects the state. Would the Federal Highway Administration be advocating life cycle cost analysis if they didn't think it had a positive return on investment? Hardly. I really think that there are a number of things that are in the system that provide agencies like the State Highway Administration to make the right choices. We think this House Bill 1325 will help them. It'll be another tool that they can use to help make better decisions and spend the money that we hope we get better. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Madam Chair, if I might, there is a large packet that includes case studies from Colorado and Pennsylvania, as well as more information than you ever want to know from the Federal Highway Administration, but a nice little 2-page synopsis and a couple of amendments that we would suggest to this bill. With that, we'd ask for a favorable report with amendments.
Thank you very much. Delegate Barvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While you were testifying, I looked up on a website called, believe it or not, there's a website called differencebetween.net. And so, of course, I asked, what's the difference between concrete and asphalt? So it looks like they're saying that concrete is slightly more expensive. It holds up better, but it is harder to repair. basically they're giving the pros and cons of concrete. But let me ask you one question. Growing up, I remember some concrete roads, and it seems to me that what used to happen, maybe it doesn't happen anymore, is that at the seams, that's where it would start to crack, and you would feel it when you were driving over it, and that chipping at where the seams are is where the road would start to break down. Now, maybe that's old technology. I don't know. I know nothing about road construction, so I'd love for you to educate me on this.
Well, Mr. Delegate, you're exactly right. That is old technology. We solved that problem about 10 or 15 years ago. Here's the problem with concrete. It lasts so dang long. Okay? So the only reason you still see those problems out there is because the product's so darn good. We don't have the opportunity to go out there and fix it. There are some fixes and things like that that can improve old existing concretes, but that's the way it is. We're not taking advantage of those because you're not seeing any new concrete roads go down in this state. That's slightly more expensive. That's going to be slightly more expensive when we're looking at resurfacing costs. On initial upfront costs, it's going to be a cost savings. My company has a housing development that we're doing in Charles County. We have competitively bid a brand spanking new road in a residential neighborhood. A 10% cost savings on initial costs. Forget life cycle, on initial costs for the concrete. The difference? We just opened up to competition. That's the difference.
Let me ask another question. What effect does salt and the other treatments that are put on roads during the wintertime, what effect does that have on asphalt versus concrete?
There's a lot of chemistry there's a lot of chemistry that could be talked about there, and I don't want to bore you with the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you this, salt does no damage to concrete. If you put it on your garage floor or on a Home Depot floor, it's not going to eat through or anything like that. It changes the freezing point of water. And when concrete's been done poorly, typically in a driveway or a sidewalk, the lowest bidder comes in and does that, puts too much water in it, weakens the surface of the concrete. It makes it more susceptible to freeze-thaw, and salt will just make that a little bit worse. But on a roadway, that's not the same issue. Those roadways are done well. Our State Highway Administration has great policies in place to build great roads, and salt will not adversely affect those roadways.
And if I could just add one thing, and that was
Sure.
going back to the road issue and the joints. About 10, 15 years ago, the Salisbury bypass was built, and that was built with the latest technology, and it was designed by the state. They brought Federal Highway Administration in and University of Maryland.
Is that Route 50 bypass around Salisbury?
50 bypass. It's a nice road. The asphalt there is nice as well.
Okay, and final question. This website is saying asphalt roads have better skid resistance and provide good traction. Snow melts faster on asphalt roads than on concrete roads. Comment on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different points there.
Mm-hmm.
Asphalt roads on day one are a smooth riding road. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful road to ride on. Once they start to deteriorate, that changes. So my boss was, when I worked for the state in research, was in charge of skid and roughness. And those numbers change very soon after the road's been out there for a while. As far as the ice and snow melting quicker, it does on asphalt. On a black surface, it absorbs the heat. But the other thing that you have with that is that heat island effect. Mm-hmm. So with all the environmental concerns that we have, if you have asphalt, it's sucking the heat in, it's making our environment hotter, and the concrete reflects it out.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
As I read the bill, it seems like it's a pretty reasonable request. The only thing you want to do is, be allowed to have regulations established and be part of the process,
Right.
to play in the game, to get out there and to bid, for them to form regulations so that, that regardless of construction or maintenance or operation cost, that you can have an equal opportunity to bid in the process. And what you're saying is that at now you just don't have it.
Yes,
That's
sir.
exactly right. But in addition to that, what the bill would establish is consistency. It'll set out those criteria. It'll weigh those criteria. That's going to apply to this road, and this
Right.
road. Same criteria, same weight.
Right.
Consistency.
And the last question is, I remember that some things, I don't know why things stick in my mind. I don't know why it does. Some things do. But we had a bill a couple of years ago, I don't know, and I remember the asphalt companies saying that in 1992, that when the last time we increased the transportation, the gas tax, asphalt was $52 a ton in 92, and now it's over $500 a ton. How does that compare to your cost? I'm just curious about.
The one thing I would say to that, I guess the unfortunate part of my industry, if the oil company, if the price of oil goes up, they pass that on to the asphalt guys. And it's very tough for them because they can get fluctuations. From the cement industry and my industry, when my costs go up, and they do, I can't pass that on to the concrete suppliers, right? You won't let me?
You try.
I try. We really can't pass all of that on. So we don't get as much fluctuation with concrete or with cement as you see with asphalt.
But it is competitive.
We're competitive, yes.
A fundamental difference between concrete and asphalt is the binder. The binder in asphalt, the glue that holds it all together, is liquid asphalt. The binder in concrete is cement. When you index those values and adjust for inflation, and MIT's just done this life cycle cost, projecting out into the future, the cost of cement is actually going down when adjusted for inflation and indexed. The cost for asphalt is skyrocketing. Unsustainable.
Thank you.
Delegate Serafini?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one of you could answer this just so we can keep moving here. You're saying the technology's improved. Part of it is the change in seasons, the expansion and contraction. I would assume that our weather changes, unlike in the South where there maybe have a little more warmth and don't go back. I know in Cleveland, driveways, in the winters they get are somewhat difficult. Is that part of the technology improvement you would say that's fixing that expansion and contraction?
Part of it was the design.
Okay.
And it's shorter spacing.
Okay. That's one. The second part is we have a cement plant in my community, and one of the things I was surprised to learn is because they're incinerating at such a high temperature, they're taking used tires, and so there's a green effect to concrete production that's pretty amazing, and that they would even do more, and they're able to burn it when they're making the aggregate, and I'm acting like I know what I'm talking about here, so I'm using terms that don't be impressed, but it seems there is a green impact. It seems that there is a positive for things that we want to get rid of. In the community, you can gather them up, and people do it in our community, gather tires and bring it and burn it. So that is another additional feature that would make concrete advantageous. Fair?
Yes, and up to half of what we put into concrete, into the cement, is recycled.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Part of my question has been answered by the rubber tire chips that I know have been used on a lot of products, including sound barriers,
right,
that have a lot of rubber in it. My question is, and I've always wondered, the concrete versus asphalt. Has there ever been any study or data collected regionally regarding weather conditions? For example, the north or the east has got a lot of snow and so forth, versus Florida?
Yes.
And what they use as opposed to what we use?
In general, the hotter the climate you're in, the more concrete you see. And that has a lot to do with the way asphalt holds up under extreme temperature conditions. So the hotter it is, the more rutting you're going to get with asphalt, and the more concrete you usually see in the state.
Does weight, or which is the worst for roads, weight or miles traveled?
Well, it depends on, you can take a look at the amount of trucks and the weight of the trucks that are on a road. Concrete stands up to that very, very well. There's some asphalt pavements that can stand up to that pretty well too. But a concrete pavement, I'm working right now with the Navy, and the Navy has concrete pavements that are going to last for 75 years. That's what they've designed them for. And the loads that are going on those pavements are incredible compared to what we're putting on our pavements. So we have technology today, and we have systems of measurement that will tell us how long a pavement will last that are very sophisticated, that we can push the concrete pavements out to 75 years.
Okay, my last one, Madam Chair. On the concrete, and I was thoroughly convinced that concrete does last much longer than asphalt, because I've never seen a runway, and I'm ex-Air Force.
Right.
Never seen a runway made out of asphalt.
Right.
And I've never seen a bus pad, I work for MTA.
Right.
Never seen a bus pad made out of asphalt.
Right.
Do you agree?
I absolutely agree.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always good to see John A. Wood, someone from St. Mary's County. Question about the environmental effects. Can you just elaborate someone on the benefits, the environmental benefits versus asphalt?
Sure, I can address a few of those. Martha already talked a little bit about it. There's, and this is a recent study that's come out of MIT, is the fuel efficiency. On average, a vehicle's fuel efficiency is going to be 5% better on Maryland roads. Now, that's going to have an environmental impact in the carbon footprint. What they're doing isn't, we're talking about LCCA, life cycle cost analysis. MIT's main focus is on LCA, looking at the total package, not just cost. So they're looking at the carbon costs. And what they figured is with all the burning you have to do for cement or all the hot mix asphalt you have to do, the initial carbon costs are the same. But it's an 80% carbon cost savings over the life cycle by putting that concrete down instead. Just a few years ago, 2011, on Maryland Route 100, the State Highway Administration, looking to save money anywhere they could, started dimming the lights on Route 100 to try and see if they could save a few bucks. Well, guess what? You need 30% less lighting on a brighter surface. So we could, if we were at that point, we would have had that cost savings built into the system already. Plus, we wouldn't have had all the maintenance. And so those factors in there as well. There's the recycled content. There's the reduction in the urban heat island effect. All sorts of different things can go into making that a greener pavement. It's runoff and everything like that. The runoff is going to be cooler coming off of an asphalt pavement. You talk to Tuck Hines, the president at CERC, or sorry, concrete. Tuck Hines, the president at CERC, a great institution to be able to have here in Maryland, and he'll tell you the most damaging thing coming off is that hot water going into our waterways is creating huge problems. So these are just the things we don't think about that add up. Think about resealing asphalt on your driveway or something like that. Next year, you got to do it, right? Well, where do you think it went?
Great. Well, thank you, and please say hello to Donna Bunn for me. So,
Well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, just trying to get clarity. Concrete road, asphalt road. How long do you expect that concrete road to last? How long do you expect that asphalt road to last?
Concrete road, if you do, like I said, we can build them to last 75 years.
Same road.
And that's not me saying it, that's the Navy saying that. For asphalt roads, and I'll let the asphalt industry talk to that more than I will. My experience, maybe I should shut up right then. I just got to thank you.
No problem. I'll ask them later. Okay.
Okay.
With regards, I think Delegate Miller touched on this, and so did a number of other delegates. So concrete roads are more environmentally friendly than the asphalt roads are.
Yes.
Okay, and to the sponsor, Delegate Wood, I see here that there's a fiscal note here. And, excuse me, fellas. So I see there's a fiscal note here. In $4 million, I'm thinking, I know if you want to just make the complete change, it probably costs more than that. Is this $4 million just to try to get clarity on it, to implement, where do we spend the $4 million for? It doesn't seem like it should cost $4 million if that's not including the purchase of these different products.
If you speak to the folks at MIT, and we did recently after reading the fiscal note, they thought those numbers were quite high.
Okay.
And in fact, they have worked with several state agencies and would be willing to work with Maryland to implement the first model of a real life cycle cost analysis. And maybe that might cost the tune of $1 million, but would cover the whole state. And then somewhere in the range of $250,000 a year to run all the projects in the state. And again, depending on the extent of the life cycle cost analysis, but if you speak to the folks at MIT, they use an outside consulting firm at the tune of about $1,500 a day to run these.
And my last question, Madam Chair, this is a good site Delegate Barvey recommended as well. Maintenance on a road, in terms of the maintenance, is there any argument that maintaining an asphalt road is a little bit cheaper than it is a concrete road?
I would argue. And this goes into how long that pavement is going to last and what you need to do to it. So 97 was built when I was still working for the state, and very little has had to be done to 97 in about 20 years now. They are going to go in and they're going to do some rehab. There's some joints that need to be fixed and things like that. When
Let
you
me
run
try
into...
Let me try this, just to.
Yeah.
So do both of these services get potholes? I'm just trying to take something simple that I can relate to. Do both services get potholes, maybe less on concrete, but do they both get potholes?
They can, and less on concrete.
How much to replace a concrete pothole? How much to replace an asphalt pothole?
It's going to be more for the concrete.
It will be. I appreciate the honesty there. Thank you.
And another thing I want to be perfectly clear about, we're talking about environmental impacts. What goes into concrete is Portland cement, one of the main ingredients. And there is CO2 emissions in manufacture of Portland cement. What we have in Maryland, we have slag cement. And slag cement is usually substituted around 35 to 50% for Portland cement. So it dramatically reduces the amount of CO2 going into that pavement.
And then melts for the snow. We get snow here and the place becomes hard.
Yes.
Did you all address that?
We talked about it. If you have an asphalt road, it will melt quicker.
How much quicker?
Okay. Well, I don't know. I've never measured it before, but it is a product of the asphalt heats up. A darker surface will heat up a lot more than a lighter surface. So you have a balance there. On the one side, you have snow that will melt quicker. On the other side of that, in the summertime, you get a heat island effect where the temperatures are much higher and it's not as good for the environment.
If I might add, though, if you look at states like Minnesota, they have primarily concrete roads in Minnesota. I'm sure they get colder days than we see.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Wood, I'm trying to figure out how you came up with this bill, but given the fact that you have 9 children, 22 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren, I can see why we need to build our roads a lot more durable just for your family alone. Can you comment on that?
Well, when I started out, we were using gravel roads.
But I do like your bill, Delegate. I think, this is a simple thing that you're asking just to do the LCC analysis, so I just want to say I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you all.
While I got the pros, I got to ask this one. And you, my Morganite, 83 Jones Falls Expressway.
Yes.
When it was built using a combination of crushed glass
Yes.
and other materials.
Yes.
Please tell me they're not doing that anymore. Or are they?
I don't know of anybody putting crushed glass in their concrete anymore.
Okay.
When I worked for the state, that was one of the things they wanted to keep recycling, and they pushed the glass, and it's not good for concrete. So, thank you.
Fred Kelly.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Fred Kelly. I'm the Severn River Keeper. I've already submitted written testimony, but what I wanted you all to take a look at is that in my testimony there's a picture of the headwaters of my river. And this is what my river looks like after almost every rainstorm. And the question a lot of people ask me is that why is it that we have to go around and spend the kind of money we have to spend to fix the stormwater runoff problems that come off of our asphalt highways? Now, you all have asked a lot of really good questions, and this bill fascinated me only because these questions haven't been answered. And I think all this bill will do is really help us answer the questions about concrete versus asphalt. I just finished a very small project to handle the runoff from the Annapolis Mall parking lot, and it cost us $1 million. It was pouring really toxic, incredibly nasty stuff into the creek where kids swim, Saltworks Creek, which is on my river, the Severn River. And that was just a very small project, but that was $1 million project. The reason I think this bill might be helpful is because I think if the folks who go to do the assessment, if they actually bring into the consideration financial costs, the cost of the stormwater cleanups that have to be done because we're using asphalt instead of concrete. I don't know any of the answers that these gentlemen have back here. And the only reason I would suggest a favorable report on this particular bill is that we can get some answers to the question. I think that it's only fair that we take a look at the option of concrete as opposed to just doing it, because if we keep doing it the same way we're doing it, the cost to this state of the cleanup is going to be astronomical. And looking down the road a long ways, which our highway people do, if we don't meet the 2025 requirements under the Clean Water Act, you realize the amount of federal funding this state will lose from the federal government. So I think we really ought to start looking now. And all this bill does is it just gives us a chance to answer some of the questions you guys have asked. That's it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Any questions of this gentleman? No. All
right, mine's not a question for you. Is MDOT going to testify? I see we have written. Are they on the sign up to testify? State Highway. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next is Ed Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee, again, for the opportunity to discuss House Bill 1325. I support House Bill 1325, and I'd like to give two examples that apply to transit rather than roads here. And one of them would be covered by the bill, and the other one isn't but should be and could be. The first thing I'd like to talk about is that when we're talking about building rail transit lines, there are differences in the depreciation period for different types of construction. So, for example, if you build rail in a tunnel, the federal depreciation period is 125 years. If you build rail down the middle of a street, the federal depreciation period is 20 years. That's a huge difference. That means that it might be worth spending more on your initial capital outlay to get something different. We did not do this kind of analysis when we were putting together the red and purple lines. Had we done it, we would probably have better projects and projects that would have more public support than what we have right now, certainly for the red line. The second thing I'd like to point out is that the bill only applies to infrastructure and not rolling stock. If we're talking about a $5 million floor on this, maybe we should consider including rolling stock. We had a problem about 10 years ago. We were putting out a bid for buses at MTA, and the low bid came in, and it was made by Neoplan. So we bought a bunch of Neoplans, and they've been problems ever since. All the transmissions had to be replaced on the Neoplans, and they give a very rough ride. They require a lot of maintenance, and as soon as we get rid of them, we will, but in the meantime, we've been stuck with them. Why were we stuck with them? Well, the cost of the Neoplans was about $5,400 per seat. And the Orion, which is a top-of-the-line bus, came in at $976 more for the entire vehicle than the Neoplan, even though the per-seat cost was only $4,600 compared to $5,400 for the Neoplan. So we bought the cheaper bus that has cost us much, much, much more money over the years and provided less reliability and worse service. We need to do this for highways, we need to do this for transit infrastructure, and we need to do it for transit rolling stock above a certain level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this witness? Thank you. Barbara Madison.
All I have to do is say, me too, for Ed Cohen. Because maybe then we wouldn't have so many problems with mass transit or highways. Because we've had so many problems with cars getting broken, so many problems with MTA getting broken. Maybe we can fix something.
Any questions? Thank you. The opponent, J.D. Hanson.
Chair Hickson, I do have written testimony here. I don't know who to give it to pass it out. Give it to you. Chair Sheila Hickson, members of the House Ways and Means Committee, my name is Jay Hanson, and I am the Executive Vice President for the National Asphalt Pavement Association I'm also a resident of Kensington, Maryland. NAPA was formed in 1955 and is based in Prince George's County. The association represents asphalt pavement producers and suppliers across the nation. Many of the NAPA member companies are family-owned businesses who provide a valuable service that is critically important to Maryland's economy, and that is a smooth, safe, and sustainable pavement. I am here today to present a national perspective on House Bill 1325, a bill to legislatively mandate life cycle cost analysis procedures for all capital projects valued at $5 million or more in the state of Maryland. NAPA strongly opposes legislating life cycle cost analysis procedures because it hampers the state's professional engineers' ability to consider all options, in designing the most appropriate pavement for a project. When properly used, a life cycle cost analysis can be a useful tool for public transportation agencies such as Maryland DOT to aid in pavement selection decisions. However, there are many factors that must be considered in pavement type selection, including project cost, project length, type of traffic, traffic volume, pavement quantity, the presence of bridges and structures, lane modifications or additions, ramps, the acceleration and deceleration lanes. House Bill 1325 would constrain the state's professional engineers in giving these factors the appropriate consideration in the pavement type selection process to design the best project for the site conditions. Chair Hickson, House Bill 1325 would, for the very first time, politicize the pavement selection process by mandating an LCCA procedure with specific engineering requirements. It puts the House of Delegates in the position of designing roads, a task best left to professional engineers. Now, last July, Congress enacted the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, Public Law 112-141. This legislation provides funding for the Federal Aid Highway Program and authorizes the programs under which the funding is distributed to the states. Life cycle cost analysis issues were raised in the Congress during the consideration of MAP 21, and Congress decided, rightfully so, not to impose legislative mandates on the states. Instead, under Section 52003 of MAP 21, Congress authorized the General Accountability Office, or GAO, to prepare a report to be issued by this July on the best practices for calculating life cycle costs and benefits. As part of the study, the GAO is required to conduct a thorough literature review and survey current life cycle cost practices of state departments of transportation, including the Maryland Department of Transportation, where the engineering science, and the expertise in building and maintaining highways and roads resides. I understand GAO has been very busy meeting with state transportation departments to prepare the report and has every intention of meeting their statutory deadline for issuing the report as prescribed by MAP 21. And a copy of that provision is attached to my testimony. Chair Hickson, members of the Ways and Means Committee, NAPA respectfully urges you not to act upon House Bill 1325. The GAO report will provide the Maryland Department of Transportation valuable information on the appropriate application of life cycle cost analysis. In closing, NAPA opposes Highway Bill 1325. And Chair Hickson, could you indulge me for just a moment if I can respond to some of the questions and answers that we heard?
Why don't we listen to what the
Okay.
committees would like to ask, and then we'll go ahead. They may no counter.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions in this witness? Bill Turner.
Especially after working at GAO, doing just those things that you talked about. You indicated in your testimony that that it would hamper an option. What did you mean by that? I'm not quite sure.
If you use life cycle cost analysis as sole basis for pavement selection, and let's just say down the road there's some sort of innovation that occurs in the industry, you've really stifled that innovation. And I'll give you one example. We're using a lot of reclaimed asphalt pavement in our paving materials.
every 1 ton of asphalt pavement has about 20% of reclaimed asphalt pavement. So if we're basing the decision on what type of material we're going to use, and we're not going to take into consideration innovations like that, you've now hampered the engineering department from moving forward in some other areas, whether they're environmental or other noise. For example, let's just say we come up with a low noise pavement, but now we have to go to you to ask you to write that into the spec, because you politicize now the whole LCCA process. We have a program at
I
FHWA.
quite do not see that politicizing. I see that as something additional that you have to add in because it's a necessary. I mean, these are moving targets. I mean, they change. The specs change,
right,
all the time. I mean, that's one thing. We don't always use the same rules. We, depend on the issue. Also, you said about the cost, length, traffic line, modification. The only thing I want, and as I read this bill, the only thing I think that we ought to do is we ought to give the asphalt company and the concrete companies a fair opportunity to compete. And that's what this really, to me, what this bill is all about, is, do they have a fair opportunity to compete? And, based upon, your testimony, I think, there isn't that fair opportunity to compete right now. And I think that's what's the most important thing. Would you not agree with me on that?
No, I would disagree. I think there's one statistic thrown out that 98% of the roads in Maryland are asphalt, way overstates the market. There may be asphalt on the road, but that's merely on the surface. And maybe it's on there as a temporary treatment. You have a lot of composite pavement out there, and the DOT is just putting a 2-inch layer of asphalt to extend the life of the road till they have more money to rip it out and replace it, whatever it is. So that's overstating the market. The other issue you have is with the federal aid highway program being in such uncertain times right now, there's not enough revenue coming in to support the current program. You should all know there's a fiscal cliff in our own transportation program come 2015. We've had extensions for the past 3 years. And so what's happening is, in terms of the concrete and cement industries, their intensities are in the bridge projects, the longer-term, multi-year projects, and they're getting shelved because Congress can't come up with a way to fund this program, as you're struggling for it, too, in Maryland. And so the state, how can they put a project out when you don't know what your federal aid highway dollars are going to be in a few years out? And it takes 4 or 5 years to build a project. So we're hurting, too. Our tons are down 40%. You're going to hear a witness from Maryland Asphalt Pavement Association, and they're going to tell you how bad it is for our industry. We need the economy moving. We need Congress to make decisions on funding, and we need all of you to think about investing in our transportation systems, highways and transit. But right now, we're fighting like this. And one other point. The Federal Highway Administration just put out a technical advisory that said that alternate design, alternate bids are no longer experimental. It's encouraged, it's used. The DOT can do it now. So to go rush into legislation based on statistics that I don't know where they're coming from.
Okay. That last question that I want to ask is my quote on statistics of $52 a ton, 91 versus $500 plus today. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, but what was not accurate is that they're passing those costs on to the customer, to the asphalt pavement contractor. We're using more reclaimed asphalt pavement. We're using recycled shingles. We're using more mixed asphalt. All the type of innovations that need to go forward that you would box us in with this legislation now. We are literally mining the roads, taking it back to the plant, and putting it right back down for a nice, smooth pavement. We're America's most recycled product, so we're not second to anyone when it comes to sustainability. We have a very sustainable product.
Delegate Barber.
Thank you, Madam. I think you're completely misreading this bill, and maybe I'm not reading it carefully enough, but it seems to me this bill's purpose is to require life cycle cost analysis to be performed and then reported to the Board of Public Works. And at the very end of the bill, It says, on completion of the life cycle cost analysis of a project under this paragraph, the department shall submit a comprehensive report on the results of the analysis to the Board of Public Works to assist the board in its consideration of any contracts associated with the project requiring approval by the board. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I do not read this language as requiring in the law the complete lack of consideration to other factors. The way I'm reading this bill is that life cycle cost analysis has to take place. It has to be reported to the Board of Public Works so that they can take life cycle costs into account when letting contracts. Now, am I right, or am I reading this language incorrectly?
You're going to have MDOT testify, or State Highway Administration, but LCCA is already being used. It's not new, as was mentioned to you up here. And in fact, the other witness said he's been doing it for 20 years. Life cycle cost analysis is already being done by the states. Now, if you're going to then mandate procedures around this issue, and the state DOT has to operate within the four corners of the provision, and industries are not happy with it, they're going to come to you and ask for changes. And you're going to get into this, you're going to get into, it's just going to be a cluster of issues that you're going to be dealing with here on out. Well, let them, they'll speak in terms of what they're doing in life cycle cost analysis. But let me just give you one more example. In ICE-T, the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, 1991, there was a mandate for 20% chrome rubber in the pavements by Senator Chafee of Rhode Island. And that had, the state DOTs hated it. And that ultimately had been repealed. It had a lot of unintended consequences when you heat chrome rubber to the temperatures of asphalt pavement at the time. It had potentially harmful effects and so forth.
But, sir, there's nothing like that in this bill.
But you're going down the slippery slope of getting into these issues where I think the science really resides with the engineers. They know the materials. They've developed this over many, many years. And now you're being asked to impose a one-size-fits-all. You have different regions within Maryland with different materials, different paving. There's also mention of the MIT report, and just for the record, MIT reports are paid for by the Portland Cement Association and the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. So, I would look at data that is peer-reviewed, is neutral, federal-type data, that sort of thing. I'm sure the State Highway Administration can help find some of that for you, but be careful about looking at some of this research and who's funding it, because obviously they have a stake in the outcomes. Some of the things that I heard are very concerning to me.
Madam Chair, similar to Delegate Barber, I'm just going to read your testimony here and tell me, am I misinterpreting what you're saying? When properly used, a life cycle cost analysis can be a useful tool for public transportation agencies, such as MDOT. That's your own testimony here. That's all this bill is trying to do, is say we should use these. I mean, so it seems like your argument should be making sure we use them properly.
Right.
But it seems as if you're opposing to saying we shouldn't even use them at all.
No, we support life cycle cost analysis, but we believe that should be done through the State Highway Administration and not legislatively mandated. That's our position. Right. And the State Highway Administration does do life cycle cost analysis.
I got you. Another point. So there's a big, I've got a highway within my district, runs parallel with the Potomac River. Parallel, Indian Highway, runs parallel.
Yeah.
Is asphalt more dangerous in terms of the community and the runoff to get into the Potomac than concrete may be?
The runoff? Talk about runoff, water runoff? Asphalt pavements do not leach anything. What's coming is the water runoff. It's on any kind of hardscape surface. There's different technologies for both asphalt and concrete in terms of porous asphalt and pervious concrete. Some states are exploring porous asphalt on the shoulders as a way for the water runoff and mitigate.
What handles oil better? I saw something online that says concrete handles oil better. Is that true? Or
I'm not sure.
You wouldn't be the
I'd
one
have
to
to
answer?
see what that was to answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just briefly, I appreciate your comments. Yes, we have to look at the interests and all that. You understand that. But it appears to me that we're all trying to say we want every best option. We don't want any limits on it. And we we have to look out for the taxpayers' dollars. That's the end thing. We don't want to limit anything. We want everything to be viable. We understand this is a changing dynamic. We understand that industries are hurting and stuff like that as well. So I hope you understand that. And we don't want to take anything away, and I don't think this legislation does that. Do you understand that's where we're coming from? And what may happen in the future, we can't tell, but that's our concern.
Right, and that's fine. And I would just recommend that you use actual data, the actual historical data of how long asphalt pavements last versus concrete pavements, and don't rely on anyone's testimony here.
Okay, great.
Get the data.
Yep. And we assume the board will do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to give you another opportunity just to make sure I understood correctly with the environmental part. Asphalt is not oil-based.
It is oil-based. The asphalt cement.
There's no leaching of oil off of asphalt when it rains?
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
And then the only other thing, Madam Chair, just to mention, Delegate Barbe mentioned this already, so he asked the brilliant question on page 5, lines 24 to 29. I would just ask you to review that, because all it's doing is giving the Board of Public Works options. That's all it's doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Hickson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Happy to be here in front of you. I'm Marshall. No, Greg is with Highway Administration. Okay. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff today, and as many of you know, I did work for 30 years for the Highway Administration. I've worked for the asphalt industry for almost 20 years now, so I've been around. It was good to hear Harry Pringler mention that 20 years ago when I worked with him at the Highway Administration, he was doing life cycle cost analysis. So I just want to stress the fact that this is not something new to the Highway Administration. It is a tool in their toolbox. They routinely use this tool. What I haven't heard said here today is that both Henry and I and some of the other gentlemen that have testified for you are both working with the Materials Division of the State Highway Administration right now, reviewing their life cycle cost analysis procedures. And this is being done at the request of the concrete industry. They're looking to increase their market share, apparently. The asphalt industry did not see anything flawed in what was going on. The Highway Administration routinely uses this tool. I've heard a lot of advertising going on during the testimony here today. I'm not here to advertise. I'm here to tell you that the Highway Administration has a life cycle cost analysis policy. They routinely use that policy for the jobs of the size that is stated in the bill. And what we're doing here is more or less adding a redundant step where we're transferring a DOT policy to the legislature. I can cite many instances in the past where we have competed head-to-head with the other industry, and we've done well in those competitions, and I'm not ashamed to talk about that. I don't see the need to bore you with it. I also do not see the need to legislate something that already exists. A point of clarity on the cost of the liquid asphalt cement that I've heard mentioned recently. The liquid asphalt cement is about 5% of the total asphalt product. So it does fluctuate with the price of oil. In that time frame, I just looked on my website, and I've got data posted on my website that goes back as far as 1992, and the cost of a ton of liquid asphalt was about $125, and today that same cost is at about $530 in round numbers. So there has been escalation over the years, but the index that these fellows cited is an index. It's an adjustment to what the true cost of the product is. It holds both sides harmless. There are many times when contractors refund money to the state of Maryland because of that index. So I would be more than happy to answer any question the group may have. I just don't want you getting caught up in an advertisement for another industry.
Thank you very much. Delegate Walker.
Chair, fair enough. I appreciate you answering some questions. I asked earlier about, they gave me on a road with the same amount of traffic. They said they can have a road that can survive around 75 years.
Yes.
What would a road do for an asphalt road?
There is a design procedure that the asphalt industry uses now. It's called perpetual pavement. If properly designed and installed, a road will last indefinitely with only the removal and replacement of the top 2 inches of that road, not the whole structure. You can expect in a properly built road to get about 20 years out of the top 2 inches.
20 years, that's pretty significant.
Yes,
20
it
years
is.
compared to 75, and I guess the assumption is you may not have to repair the whole road. You just piecemeal parts of the road at a time.
No. In a perpetual pavement concept, you would only ever replace the 2 years. There was some interesting testimony. There was a question about airport runways. And here we are in Maryland. We have the Baltimore-Washington International Airport. It was opened in 1949. It is built out of exclusively asphalt runways. It has won the Perpetual Pavement Award from the National Center for Asphalt Technology. The base asphalt at the Baltimore-Washington International Airport, which was made with technology that's much different to today's technology, is in place and functioning. What was placed there in 1949. The loads have increased significantly. The traffic has increased significantly. Asphalt is a pavement that does last, and we can prove it to you if you...
But you just keep replacing the top 2 inches of it. That's
Yes.
why that's able to stay there. Okay, thank you so much.
I should use that as an example, the airport, because we don't build airports like we build roads. Normally, there is a almost... normally we build airports with about 3 times more concrete and asphalt than we do regular roads. Is that true?
Three times is a much thicker section than I am aware of. I am aware of some airport sections that are several feet thick for rigid pavements. The section at BWI Airport, which handles extremely heavy loading, is much thinner than that, about 1 foot, or about 50% of what I've seen on rigid pavements at similar-sized airports.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question I want to ask, have you ever built a runway for the military?
Yes, we have. The very first runway that ever received a professional or a NCAT award for perpetuity was for a military base in the state of Alaska, and in order to win this award, it has to stay in place for 35 years. The very first award of that type that was ever given. There's only been about 50 of them given in the total history of our country. The very first one was a military airport in in Alaska.
Was that runway capable of handling the landing or taking off of a B-52 loaded?
Yes, sir.
And what does a B-52 weigh loaded?
That's all right. Don't answer that. I just wanted to follow up with this question. Long term, looking down the road in the future, seeing the way that the oil prices have gone up and everything else, if the state were to look at making the best investment for what's going to happen years and years to come, I'm starting to understand this better. If we keep building asphalt roads and we're going to keep having to replace that top 2-inch layer with more asphalt, and given the way that the price of asphalt has continued to go up further, more and more, would the long-term savings be better with concrete? And I know it may be putting you in a tough position, but help me justify a reason to even think about asphalt compared to concrete.
I'll be happy to do that. We had an extreme price spike for the liquid asphalt component. Basically, asphalt and concrete roads are built out of exactly the same thing. 95% of either one is naturally occurring aggregates. It's only the binder that the gentleman previous to me spoke of that differ, the 5%. So it's a very small component. There was a price spike in the year 2008 for liquid asphalt cement that was very high. If we look today, some 5 years after that price spike, the cost of liquid asphalt today is 60% of what it was at the time of that spike. So we're going down, not up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to be here today.
Certainly.
And I appreciate, all the things that you cited where asphalt is advantageous. And in a roadway, I think it's also advantageous to use asphalt when building sidewalks or bike paths, simply because the asphalts don't have the groove that concrete typically does when you build something, where the width is only 5 feet or so. And also, asphalt is really good for runners as well, because when you run on asphalt, it's a lot easier on your bones, and I
lived in Baltimore City for quite some period of time, and obviously it wasn't recently, but I did jog, and I jogged on concrete streets and asphalt and concrete streets in Baltimore City, and I had shin splints for the entire time, so I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, just a quick one. The binder in asphalt, does that come from oil or natural gas? Which petroleum product?
It's a petroleum-based product. It's an oil. It's not a natural gas.
Okay. The reason I ask is because shale gas is becoming increasingly more inexpensive, whereas oil is becoming more expensive as time goes by.
Yeah.
Thank you. No.
If I could just add a quick comment to you. In Canada, there are shale oils, and liquid asphalt is being extracted from those shales, and some of it is being imported to this area.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we have the Great Wall.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Greg Welker. I'm the Chief Engineer for Operations for Maryland State Highway Administration, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Department of Transportation. MDOT appreciates the importance of life cycle cost analysis, and we continually do life cycle cost analysis on most of our major paving projects. We believe that requiring them, though, for all capital projects, which is what the bill requires of more than $5 million, is unnecessary and would be quite expensive, difficult, and time-consuming to do. SHA developed a life cycle cost analysis process back in 2004 for pavement selection. We use that as a way of examining the costs and the overall benefits of asphalt or concrete when deciding on which pavement type to use for specific projects. we take into account numerous factors into that decision-making process. We also look to the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation in terms of determining which factors have enough scientific evidence and engineering evidence to unbiasedly go into that evaluation. The critical issue regarding many of our pavement type selections is actually what we call the maintenance of traffic. And this is a case where there's a user cost when we put up a lane closure to do work on a roadway and you're trying to travel on it at the same time. When I'm building a road that does not have traffic on it, a new road, or I'm reconstructing a road by detouring you somewhere else, in those cases, many of our large projects will end up being concrete. When I'm looking at resurfacing a road, an existing road, like, say, Maryland 29 or Georgia Avenue or something like that, because those roads have to be open for the morning and the evening rush hour, and because you know what the level of traffic is on the weekend, we pretty much end up always using asphalt on those roadways because we have such a limited amount of time to work on them during the night. We regularly work with a number of our partners in terms of our life cycle cost analysis. I work with both the concrete industry and the asphalt industry in coming up with how we do these evaluations. They participate on the panels. They're participating currently on a revision of how we do these things along with federal highways. And as such, we think that that communication needs to keep going onward and keep moving forward as we move this forward through the industry. And we're not sure that a bill and a new law for this is necessary at this point in time. One of the issues with House Bill 1325 is that it does not impact just pavement selection. The way that it's written, it requires a life cycle cost analysis for every capital project over $5 million. That would mean I would be doing life cycle cost analysis for painting bridges, for doing traffic signals, for installing sidewalks, for installing drainage ponds, for putting out guardrail contracts, and a number of other contracts that many of the other modes, including rail and our MTA, our folks in MTA, end up doing also. At a cost of $10,000 to $15,000 or more per project to do a life cycle cost analysis, that adds up to about $2 million a year that we would be spending more to put these projects out there. I think we have other uses for that $2 million a year for that point. The other thing that this bill does is it takes every project then to the Board of Public Works, which essentially adds another step and another delay in us getting projects out onto the street. Currently, construction projects do not go to the Board of Public Works. They're directly advertised through state highways and the other MDOT modals. We want to make sure that when we put a project out, that we get it out as fast as we can, that we get it out at the lowest possible cost for the greatest amount of good for the state of Maryland. And those are the choices we like to see going into how we do the work for these. So for these reasons, MDOT respectfully requests an unfavorable report on this bill. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. A couple of things. I thought that all contract procurements over $250,000 have to go to the Board of Public Works. Am I wrong about that?
Architectural and engineering contracts go to the Board of Public Works, but for construction contracts, we actually have an exclusion under state law.
Okay. Thank you. Then the second thing, you mentioned that this would require life cycle costing for all the various things that you used as examples, and one of the examples you used were street lighting. I mean, would that be such a bad thing? I mean, most of our street lights don't use the most efficient LED technology, and we're losing money as a consequence of that. Or are you already doing that in the case of street lighting?
Well, it's an excellent example. Most of our street lighting contracts would not be covered this, and it wasn't one of the ones I used for an example there, because they're under $5 million, but we're in the process right now of switching over to entirely LEDs.
Are you?
80-some% of all my traffic signals out there, 86% I think it is, of all my traffic signals out there right now are LED. You'll see right now there's a number of interchanges that are going up with LED lighting on them. We're in the process of converting all of our overhead sign lighting into LEDs, and we're about 68%, I believe, complete with that across the state. So yes, we see those benefits ourselves.
One final thing. If we were to pass a bill like this and require life cycle costing and put it to the Board of Public Works to make the final decision about whether or not to proceed proceed with that information, here's something that I don't think the Board of Public Works is. Here's a reasoning pattern I don't think they're going through. Right now, I don't think there is such a thing. Maybe I'm wrong, and you should correct me if I am. A situation where a person sits down and says, this will inconvenience the driver for a substantial period of time, but it's going to save an awful lot of money, and maybe in this instance, the temporary inconvenience is worth it in terms of the long-term interests of the state of Maryland. And maybe that's a decision that ought to take place at the Board of Public Works level. What do you think of that?
We actually take that consideration into account. Whenever we put a construction project out, whether it's one that goes through this for any reason, we look at what we call the highway user cost, which is the amount of delay that performing that project causes for the users of the roadway.
Mm-hmm.
So a project that causes an excessive amount of delay ends up being one that we take back and say, okay, we need to do something different, whether it's a different product, a different methodology of construction, whatever. We don't put out those kind of projects because I get the phone calls when we back up roadways for those things.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Just when you were saying those different projects that you'd have to go to Board of Public Works for each one of those, I didn't think it was a bad idea using a life cycle analysis on it. Can you repeat that for me? I mean, like if you talk about painting bridges, if that's going to be such a huge expense, don't we want to get the best bang for our buck in long-term value? I mean, if you're talking about even in somebody's neighborhood, you want some neighborhoods that are going to be safe and have the longest durability.
And we do. What we do for, say, painting is we, along with many national organizations and federal highways, look at, like, say, bridge painting, okay, the types of paints used on bridge paint. And we say, okay, what's the best out there? What do we write our specs for, our specifications for? And we write specifications for a level that gives us a comfort level of both durability, cost effectiveness, and how we can actually get it applied, okay? So then we put those out like that to bid, which allows a number of different people to bid on them. And I think you're getting the best bang for your buck at that point. But it's not a question of, when you do life cycle cost analysis, you have to say, I'm going to paint this bridge. What are you comparing it against? Just the different type of paint? I think we can let the industry do that in part by meeting our specs to say, here's the minimum that we'll accept, and then price and efficiency end up forming the rest of that bid. When I look at traffic signal work, there basically are very few types of traffic signals out there. They all the pieces have to be able to talk to each other. I'm not sure that you get any kind of a different result if you would do that. And nobody has criteria anywhere for doing many of these kinds of life cycle cost analyses on these things.
And Delegate Barbe mentioned, so you're saying the construction portion of a project does not go before the Board of Public Works,
Construction,
right? But the architectural part of it does, right?
When there's an architectural or engineering contract,
yeah,
those go to the Board of Public Works. You don't have, to a particular construction project, you don't have a separate engineering or a separate architecture contract hooked to that. Okay? We will put out, say, a architecture or let's use an engineering contract. We'll have an engineering contract out there that runs for 3 years. During that course of that 3 years, that engineering contract may end up designing 12, 15 projects. Those construction projects, we bid, we open the bids, and we award the contracts. Those are what do not go to the Board of Public Works, according to COMAR.
Yeah, in your testimony, I understand your point, and I was starting to get a little bit, but then as it kind of went on, it seemed as if, and I'm just putting it bluntly out here, it seems as if almost you all don't want this because it gives you guys the ability, let's say us, we're involved in the state as well, it gives us the ability to maybe cut some corners when we see necessary over the short term compared to the long term. That's a thought. You'll have to, I don't know if that was a question. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today. You know, Americans spend the most amount of money, second only to after housing. Transportation is the next area that they spend the greatest amount of funding on, more than health care, more than food, more than a lot of other things that we buy. So given this, you know, this bill, I think, is, you know, the life cycle cost analysis is really, you know, taking a look at how can we improve things that are, you know, that we are currently doing and making it better. Now, you had said earlier in your testimony that the state highway is already doing this. So is there like an upset limit that you start to do this right now? Because
Yes.
this bill talks about $5 million. Where does your LCC analysis start?
Correct. What both industries, federal highways and state highways, agreed upon was that we would do it for projects of a value of $15 million or more that had substantial pavement work in them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned $15,000 to do these life cycle studies on a per-study basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about the average or so.
Now, do you guys do this in-house now?
Well, right now for the pavement analysis ones, we do them in-house. We do not do them for some of these other things. Nobody's developed them for some of these other types of projects. So I'm not sure how we would end up doing that.
If you do them in-house, how do we know that it's $15,000 per?
We track our costs. To every one of our projects, we have a cost code accounting.
So how many
we can
additional
track the
people,
values.
sorry, how many additional people would you have to hire to conduct these life cycle studies for contracts over $5 million?
Well, I'm probably not hiring them because I'm under a hiring freeze. So it's how much consultants am I doing for it? And
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure. For any of these things, we've never done them. When I'm looking at when we looked at the costs for what it's taken us so far, we looked at for state highways and the other modes in MDOT for life cycle cost analysis that they have done so far and used that as a basis for it.
So the big reservation, what I'm hearing from you, is mainly the cost to conduct the life cycle studies?
I think it's going to do two things. I think it's going to slow the process down in terms of getting projects out there.
Okay.
And I think it's going to end up having us spend unnecessary money.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Members of the committee, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1325, House Bill 1207.
I get it. I feel his pain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everybody,